Assalamualaikum. Today we are here with another lecture of Public International Law. It's the sixth lecture, and let's continue our United Nations Charter that we were studying in the past lectures. So, Article 12 of the uh, United Nations Charter. While the Security Council is exercising in respect of any dispute or situation, the functions assigned to it in the present Charter, the General Assembly shall not make any recommendation with regard to the dispute or situation unless the Security Council so request. Like if Security Council is playing a role about some dispute or any of the situation in the world, then General Assembly is not responsible to make any kind of recommendation about that dispute or the situation unless the Security Council don't request the General Assembly to make any kind of recommendation. Then the Secretary General, with the consent of the Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly at each session of any matter relative to the maintenance of international peace and security which are being dealt with by the Security Council. Like the Secretary General will get the consent of the Security Council whenever they will notify about any of the matter that's related to the peace. Article 13. The General Assembly shall initiate studies and make recommendations for the purpose of promoting international cooperation in the political field and encouraging the progressive development of international law, promoting international cooperation in the economic, social, cultural, educational, and health fields. Like it is the responsibility of the General Assembly to basically initiate some recommendations in the state. लाइक अगर जनरल असेंबली को ये लगता है कि कोई भी स्टेट ऐसी है जिसमें कुछ चीज़ें प्रमोट नहीं हो रही, तो जनरल असेंबली जो है वो वहाँ पे पॉलिटिकल फील्ड को प्रमोट करेगी, इनकरेज करेगी प्रोग्रेसिव डेवलपमेंट को. It will encourage the economic development. It will encourage to increase the social structure of the state. It will encourage them to do the educational changes and changes in the health fields. Article 14, subject to the provision of Article 12, the General Assembly may recommend measures for the peaceful adjustment of any situation. Like ultimately they can't, as we have seen in the Article 12, that Security Council, if Security Council is exercising or working in about any dispute, or like working about any dispute or the situation or the functions, then General Assembly can't give any kind of recommendations, but it can, subject to the provision of Article 12, the General Assembly can only recommend measures for the peaceful adjustment of any situation. Like if there is a dispute, it can provide some measures like this is how you can do the peaceful adjustment. That ultimately that depends on the Security Council if they accept their advice or not. Article 15. The General Assembly shall receive and consider annual and special reports from the Security Council. These reports shall include an account of the measures that Security Council has decided upon or take to maintain the international peace and security. Uh, of course, it is the responsibility of the General Assembly or Security Council to maintain peace in the world, and wherever there is a dispute, it is their responsibility to handle with that dispute and to maintain the security and the peace. So at the end of the year, it is the responsibility of the Security Council to provide a report to the General Assembly about the incidents of the whole year and what measures Security Council has taken to maintain the peace and security in that particular area of the world. The General Assembly shall receive and consider reports from other organs of the United Nations. As there is not only one organ, that is Security Council of the General Assembly, but there are many other organs of the United Nations, like United Nations Development of One one of those organ basically work for economic culture, one of the organ work for education, one of the organ work for health. So all of these organs will provide a report, annual report about its whole year activities, that what they have done during this whole year to promote that particular or to work for the welfare of the public. Then Article 16, the General Assembly shall perform such functions with respect to the international trusteeship system as are assigned to its under Chapter 8 and Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, including the approval of the trusteeship agreement for areas not defined as the strategic. The word is trusteeship. So, General Assembly will perform its functions only if one of the state has its trust on the system of United Nations, and the state just allow the United Nations to perform its activities in their state, and these assigned tasks are explained in the chapter 7 and 8. It basically include that you have to get a trusteeship agreement for the areas not designated as strategic. Like ultimately there are some areas where are the some unusual incidents happens, so you have to get a trusteeship approval. Like you have to trust on the General Assembly or the Security Council of the United Nations. Like if they are going to enter in that area, they are just entering to provide services to the public, and they will not interfere in any of the uh, personal matter of the state. Then Article 17, the General Assembly shall consider and approve the budget of the organization. As we know, there are different organization of the General Assembly. We will study in detail about those organization in further lectures. The expenses of the organization shall be borne by the member as apportioned by the General Assembly. As General Assembly United Nations is an organization which basically work for the welfare of the peace and security of the world or its member countries basically. So it is the responsibility of the member country that for those particular services they have to provide uh, expenses. They have to provide them with the money by each of the year, and the General Assembly will use that money to provide the services to the state. The General Assembly shall consider and approve any financial and budgetary arrangement with specialized agencies. Like the General Assembly can approve and consider any financial budgetary material arrangements, like if there's some special incident, or we can say some unusual incident happened, so General Assembly can approve the special budget for that particular matter, because usually the responsibility of the General Assembly is to protect the peace in the world. So at the start of the year they don't know if there will be a war, or there will be any kind of unusual incident will happen in any part of the world, so they can approve some specialized budget for if some unusual incident happened. Then Article 18. So it is about the voting. Article 18. Each member of the General Assembly shall have one vote. Like the member of the General Assembly will have one vote to cast. Decisions of the General Assembly on important questions shall be made by a two-third majority of the members present and voting. Like if any of the decision is should have to be taken by the General Assembly, then they will present that particular matter in the General Assembly. Then the member countries will vote about that particular matter, and it is important to get the two-third majority of the members for that particular matter. Decisions on the other question, including the determination of additional categories of the questions to be decided by a two-third majority, shall be made by a majority of the members present voting. Like if they raise a question and additionally they raise more questions with that particular question, then simply the two-third majority is needed for that question, for the answer of that question as well. Article 19. A member of the United Nations which is in arrears in the payment of its financial contribution to the organization shall have no vote in the General Assembly if the amount of its arrears equal or exceeds the amount of the contribution due from it in the preceding two full years. The General Assembly may nevertheless permit such a member to vote if it is satisfied that the failure to pay is due to conditions beyond the control of the member. Like if as we know, there are the members of the United Nations. If one of the member of the United Nations failed to provide the financial assistance which is to be decided by the General Assembly already, so or the that financial assistance cross the limit of 2 years, then they don't have any kind of they don't have authority to cast any of the vote, while the state already explained that the situation is not in the bound, or not in we can say it is beyond control of the member, like the member is not able to control the situation now. Like if we say that if Pakistan don't pay its financial arrears to the General Assembly, then for any of the matter which will be discussed in the General Assembly, Pakistan will have no right to give vote for any of the matter which will be discussed in the General Assembly. This is it for today. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in the next lecture. If you have any queries, you can ask at the end of this lecture.